Hello viewers, welcome to the editorial analysis by Drishti IAS. In this section, we regularly take editorials from various newspapers and news portals to have a better understanding of the various issues happening in India and around the globe. In this section, we first link the editorial with our UPSC syllabus, then we go analytical in order to understand some key points and at last some important concepts from the examination's perspective. Dear viewers, we truly hope that you like this initiative taken by Dristhi IAS and your feedbacks are important for us. So kindly feel free to give your important feedbacks in the comment section. So without any further delay, let's commence our session.
Dear viewer, this video is available in Hindi as well. If you wish to watch it, please visit our Hindi YouTube channel, Drishti IAS. For your convenience, the link for this video in Hindi has been provided in the description below.
Today's editorial is taken from Business Standard newspaper published on 29th of October 2020. The title of today's editorial is Growth Constraints. If we try to summarize today's editorial, we can say that the coming years will be very difficult and the state government's finances would remain under pressure. If we try to link today's editorial with our UPSC syllabus, we can link it with GS Paper 3, which has sections involving Indian economy and issues relating to planning, mobilization of resources, growth, development, employment, inclusive growth and issues arising from it, and government budgeting. Some key points from today's editorial. Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman noted on Tuesday that the growth rate in the current fiscal year might be near zero. This is an overly optimistic estimate because most forecasters, including the Reserve Bank of India, expect a near double-digit decline in real output this year. Now, it is to be noted that Nirmala Sitharaman came up with a statement which said that the growth rate for the current fiscal year is going to be around zero. However, this statement is considered highly optimistic because many forecasters, that include Reserve Bank of India as well, they have said, and according to the RBI's survey of professional forecasters, they have projected the growth rate for the current fiscal year is somewhat to be around 5.8%. Now, this is the projection which has been made by the Reserve Bank of India's survey of professional forecasters. Another agency known as Goldman Sachs, they have projected the growth rate for the present fiscal year to be around minus 14.8%. So, the level of contraction might optically make the recovery look strong in the next fiscal year and position India as one of the fastest growing large economies in the world. However, policymakers can't afford to get carried away by such numbers. However, every report which has been published, including the IMF's one, they have projected that the next year, and that is in the fiscal year 2021-22, the growth rate of India will be around 8.8%. 8.8%, and it has also been said by many forecasters that this growth rate will be the highest all across the globe. Okay. However, we have to be very careful. These are just numbers, and policymakers, they cannot get carried away with these figures. We have to be very careful while planning each and everything. The pandemic pain is likely to be more enduring for the Indian economy, and the latest study of state finances by the Reserve Bank of India released on Tuesday underscored some of the challenges. Now, the pandemic has already caused a lot of trouble for both the center as well as the state governments. And a latest study of state finances by the Reserve Bank of India, which was released on Tuesday, they have mentioned some of the challenges which both the center and the state governments are going to face. Now, let's talk about the present situation. The states are at the forefront of fighting the pandemic and providing relief to those displaced. They also undertake over 60% of the government's capital expenditure. Now, when we speak about capital expenditure is the money spent on acquisition of assets like land, building, machinery, equipments, as well as the investments of the government in shares. So, it has been said that the states are taking around 60% of the government's capital expenditure. Thus, the state of their finances will have significant impact on economy. Okay. Now, capital expenditure generally is a work done with respect to the infrastructural management. So you can say that this huge increase in the capital expenditure will definitely have a significant impact on the economy. According to the study, the gross fiscal deficit of state governments is likely to go beyond 4% of gross domestic product in the current year under the baseline scenario, and revenues would remain under pressure over the next few years. However, the pandemic-related spending would keep expenditure elevated and prolong the scissor effect. Now, here are two things which are quite important with respect to the examination perspective. So, we will discuss those things in a bit detail. Now, according to the study, it has been said that the gross fiscal deficit. Now, when we speak about the fiscal deficit, in very layman's term, fiscal deficit means the total income of the government and its total expenditure. Now, the difference between both these numbers, between the total income of the government and the total expenditure, makes what you call as the fiscal deficit. Now, it has been said that the gross fiscal deficit of the states will be over 4% of their gross state domestic product. Now, there is another figure with respect to this, that is, before the pandemic happened, before the lockdown happened, many states presented their budgets. Now, in those budget figures, they said that for the current year, the gross fiscal deficit of the states will be around 2.6% of the gross state domestic product. That is only 2.6% of the gross state domestic product. However, the states who presented their budget post lockdown, they said that the figure will be around 4.6% of the gross state domestic product. So on an average, it has been said that it is likely to go around or more than 4%, right? And this situation will definitely cause a tremendous pressure on the revenues of the states. And also the pandemic related spending, because pandemic is the biggest issue which this country has faced with respect to both, not just center as well as the state governments. Pandemic has been the biggest issue. Now, what happens? Such a situation is actually prolonging an effect which is known as scissor effect. Another term which is used for scissor effect is the double whammy effect. The double whammy effect. Now, according to the double whammy effect or the scissor effect, it happens when the revenue, you can say that a collapse in revenue is observed and there is a rise in issues related to health, and some other extra costs are also seen. That means there is a collapse in the revenue gain, there is an increase in health related issues and other related costs. Such a situation is known as scissor effect. There is one more very important thing for us, that so far it is not certain that how long this pandemic will go on. When will the vaccination come? When the vaccines will be distributed completely? When the restrictions on economic activities will be lifted completely? So we are not sure with any of these things. So this actually makes the situation even more harmful for us. The fact that the government finances at both central and state levels are stretched is only adding to the problem. According to the revised estimate for the last year, the consolidated gross fiscal deficit at state level was 3.2% of the GDP. The thing which I mentioned, last year it was around, for average for all the states together, it was around 3.2% of the GDP, okay, the state GDP. The inevitable fiscal expansion this year will affect the capital expenditure. Capital expenditure, I've already told you, things which are spent on acquisition of assets. As the central bank has noted, capital expenditure is normally treated as residual and is subject to adjustment depending upon the revenue condition. Capital expenditure was cut compared to the budget estimate for at least over the last 3 years because of the revenue constraints. Now, because of the revenue issues which we had, because of the constraint we had, government had to cut down its capital expenditure in the past 3 years just because of revenue constraints. However, Central has issued a interest-free loan of 12,000 crore rupees to the states, but it cannot be said to be very helpful. The budgeted capital expenditure is about 6.5 trillion rupees. The way forward, besides the expansion in the budget deficit, the debt stock will also restrict spending at state level. The outstanding liabilities of the state governments has gone up from 22% of the GDP in 2015 to 26.6% in the present year. Now, what exactly the term outstanding liabilities? Okay, outstanding liabilities. Now, these are those amounts which are to be paid by the state governments. Now, in 2015, the outstanding liabilities was around 22% of their GDP. However, it has increased to 26.6% in 2020. The final numbers, however, are projected to be even higher. The contingent liabilities of the state has also increased. Now, another term, contingent liability. Now, what exactly contingent liabilities are? Contingent liabilities are those obligations that will arise in future. Now, they are an obligation which will definitely arise in the future because of something which has happened in the past and might have its impact in the future as well. Like we know that the corona pandemic happened in the past, and we can say that next 1-2 years will be very affecting, like there will be a tremendous effect of the pandemic in the coming 1 or 2 years for not just India but for the entire world. The central government has also provided a liquidity support of around 90,000 crores to state power distribution companies. Government has already distributed 90,000 crore liquidity. So this would take the outstanding guarantees by the state government to well over 3% of the GDP. Therefore, the government finances are likely to be a drag on economic growth. Hence, such expenditures will definitely put an impact on the economic growth of the country. According to the IMF, India's public debt is likely to expand about 90% of the GDP. Now, what exactly public debt is? When we speak about public debt, so public debt is nothing but the liabilities of the union government, which is to be paid from the consolidated fund of India. So, it has been said that India's public debt, let's say if the GDP is around 100 rupees, so the public debt is 90%, that is 90 rupees. From 1991 till 2017-18, this figure was constantly looming at around 70-73%. However, in the last few years, it has increased by 17 points, and today we see this particular figure at 90%. The state of government finances would also test center-state relations. Now, in such a scenario, definitely there will be a situation of tussle between the state and the center government. Why? Because both of the governments, they are lacking revenue. So there will be a test between the center and state relations. Now, one such example can be seen very well with the GST compensation issues, where several states are against the policies or they are against the two offers which are presented by the government of India. So such situations, such tussle will be quite evident in the future to come. This would have implications for growth over the medium term. Therefore, India needs to be careful, and we have to take very careful economic management at all levels. Just counting on revival in the frequency indicators from the trough would not be enough. See, whatever figures have been presented for the next year or proposed for the next year, they are just figures. They are not reality. We have to ensure, we have to understand that they are just numbers. They are not the real situation. So we cannot completely rely on those numbers and be reluctant. We have to be very careful in economic management, and such policies are to be taken where there is a constant process of growing. Now, this is an initiative which is to be expected from the government of India and people sitting at decision-making levels. So viewers, this was with today's editorial. Some questions related to today's editorial. Number 1, analyze the manner in which the dynamics of interstate and center-state relations affect the larger objective of sustained economic growth. Number 2, in order to make a truly Atmanirbhar Bharat, the economic stimulus needed to be complemented by bold reforms. Discuss in 250 words. So viewers, this was with today's editorial. I hope you liked it. Thank you very much.